Good morning, everybody.
Morning. Good morning.
How is everybody today?
Today I'm doing fine.
Fine? Good.
It's a good day.
So, how many people had breakfast today? Yeah? You had breakfast? Eating breakfast is a good thing, right?
Yes.
They say it's a very important meal.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
And breakfast gives us what do we get from our breakfast?
Yes.
Mhm. We get proteins, right? You get fats, you get sugars, all these things that are necessary for life. Isn't it amazing that we can have breakfast and sustain our lives? The food we eat contains what is necessary for our sustenance. And it is a kind of miracle the way the food is broken down and made available to the body, to the cells. When we eat something, what happens? The food is taken in the mouth, the teeth grind it up. If you've got teeth, I don't know, I got a few teeth left. You grind up the food, goes down. What happens after it goes down into the stomach? Churns up, right? Churning. I see you're doing churning. That's right. That is right. The stomach is churning, moving, squeezing. Isn't that amazing? The stomach can squeeze. The stomach is pouring acid into the food to break it down. We cannot use our food the way it comes to us. It must be broken down. And it is broken down so finely that we get down to the atoms and molecules in our food. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? We get the food is broken down so finely it goes into atoms. It becomes the essential atoms and molecules necessary for our lives. It is even something like a sugar. If we look at something like a sugar, we need sugar for energy. The body uses a tremendous amount of energy. If we were sitting in a room that was 97 degrees, we would think it was pretty warm, right? I mean, we would be sweltering, maybe complaining about how warm it was. And yet the body maintains 97 degrees or 90, what is it, 98.5, 98.6. The body maintains 98.6 all the time. And we don't think it's particularly warm. That's a lot of energy to maintain that amount of heat. You know, if you had to heat a room to 98.6, you'd have to put in a considerable amount of energy. Imagine if the outside temperature was about 70, and then you had to raise it to 98.6. That would require quite a bit of energy. And yet the body does this all the time. Pretty amazing, isn't that? How does the body produce that amount of energy? Indeed, we might also ask, how does it keep it at that level all the time, even when we're asleep? Pretty amazing. One of the reasons is the very complex process that turns our food into energy. There are 3 basic steps in turning our food into energy, and that's after the food has been broken down into basic components like glucose. When we eat a piece of toast, the body will extract the sugars in the form of glucose and then take that glucose through about 30 different steps before it is ready to be used to create energy in the body. And it's a really complex process. How and where did all that begin, and how did that become the way things work for so many different animals and plants as well? Plants use a very similar system. Although they don't break down their foods the way we do, they still come to the end product the way we, in the same way. Any questions? So as we're sitting here, there are hidden mysteries and wonders that go on all the time, that maintain who we are, that keep us alive. Every day we have billions of red blood cells produced in the body. We don't notice it. Every hour there's millions and probably even billions of blood cells produced without our even having an inkling of what's going on. There is a hidden reality to this world, a hidden reality that makes this world possible, that makes life possible. That we are alive is incomprehensible. Even the most simple thing, being alive, is incomprehensible. Why should there be life? I'm going to have a little sip of coffee here. So why should there be life? The earth was formed about 4.5 billion years ago. And scientists think in about 500 million years from that birth, life appeared on the planet. As far back as 4 billion years, life may have been here. We're not sure. We're sure about 3.5 billion. That's certain. But it may go back to 4 billion. And how did life begin on the earth? Why should that have happened? We don't know. How did this world go from water and rocks and an atmosphere to become a living world? What was that spark, that movement? that cause things to go from inanimate to animate, from non-living to living. Even the simplest of living things is very, very complicated. The bacteria that are floating around in the air about us, or we have a bacteria on our skin, we have bacteria inside of us. They were the first life on the planet. Tiny cells you can't even see. And yet they were able to survive and even thrive for so long that they're here with us today. And thank goodness for that, because they aid us in the way we process our food, possibly the way we make vitamins. Many things are attributed to bacteria that we have inside of us. If you have a good bacteria in your intestines, you're generally going to be more healthy. That's why people say you should eat yogurt and things like that.
The yogurt good.
So the bacteria, which are tiny, tiny little cells, invisible, living on the earth 4 billion years ago. We don't know how that came about. Some scientists speculated might have those bacteria might have arrived on meteors or comets. They may have came from somewhere else in the galaxy, some other world. Life may travel through the galaxy on meteors or comets. That's a new idea. How amazing. The universe is full of mystery. Every moment is a mystery. That we have a sun, that there is water, that there is air to breathe, that there is even ground under our feet is a wonder. One of the big questions we have is, how did the universe go from nothing to something? People have been talking about that for thousands of years. But the question itself may be wrong. The universe may have always been something. The idea of nothing may be a concept, maybe just an idea that we have about the universe. What do you think?
There has to be nothing before there's something.
Oh, I can't hear you back there.
There has to be nothing before there's something.
There has to be nothing?
Before there's something.
Before there is something. Well, most people would agree with you. Most people think that, because it's almost impossible to understand how there could be something all along, right? How could there be something all along? We seem to live in a world, a universe that contains nothingness, and within that nothingness there are stars and planets and worlds and what have you. But the larger universe seems to be made out of nothing. Seems to be, but scientists have discovered that's not exactly true. that the empty space we observe is not empty. It's full of energetic fields. And these fields somehow combine together to create the world that we live in. That's pretty amazing. A long time ago, someone in Greece said the world is made of atoms. There are nothing but atoms and the void, he said. Everything around us, including ourselves, are made of these elusive particles we call atoms. The air we breathe, the ground, the chair we're sitting in, the clothing on our backs, our bones, our skin, the blood, everything is made of atoms. And these atoms seem to be the fundamental building blocks of the universe. They are a great wonder because they are able to create all things. About 100 years ago, we discovered there are basically about 92 atoms in the universe, 92 different kinds of atoms. The remarkable thing is that these atoms are able to combine with each other and create new things like hydrogen, which is a gas that was the first atom produced by the universe, we think. This hydrogen gas can combine with oxygen, another gas. And interestingly, what does that produce? Anybody? What do we get when we combine hydrogen with oxygen? What's this? Water. Water is what makes life possible. And water is one of the things that happen when you combine different atoms together. You also get sugars from carbon and oxygen and hydrogen. A sugar is called a hydrocarbon, right? You've heard that term, hydrocarbon. Oil is a hydrocarbon, but so is a sugar. That carbon, which is also mostly a gas, carbon can combine with oxygen and hydrogen to make sugars. And that's what plants do to create their food and to create our food. They take the carbon from the air, water, and with the power of the sunlight, they make sugar out of that in a very complex process. You just can't mix carbon and oxygen together and get sugar and water. Plants do that in a very precise and complex way. How that ever came to be is another one of the great miracles of the world, without which we wouldn't be sitting here. We need to eat because we can't make our own food, like a plant. A plant doesn't have to go anywhere. It doesn't have to go to the supermarket to make its own food, right? It just sits there, and with its amazing leaves, takes in carbon from the air and water from the roots and combines those all together to make sugars. And that runs the world, along with proteins and other things, starches and what have you. But basically, it's the sugars that plants produce out of the sunlight and water and carbon from the air. Any questions? Here's a poem from Mary Oliver. Such singing in the wild branches. It was spring, and finally I heard him among the first leaves. Then I saw him clutching the limb in an island of shade with his red-brown feathers, all trim and neat for the new year. First I stood still and thought of nothing. Then I began to listen. Then I was filled with gladness, and that's when it happened. When I seemed to float, to be myself, a wing or a tree, and I began to understand what the bird was saying. And the sands in the glass stopped for a pure white moment, while gravity sprinkled upward like rain, rising, and in fact, it became difficult to tell just what it was that was singing. It was the thrush for sure, but it seemed not a single thrush, but himself and all his brothers, and also the trees around them, as well as the gilding long-tailed clouds, gliding long-tailed clouds in the perfectly blue sky. All of them were singing, and of course, yes, so it seemed, so was I. Such soft and solemn and perfect music. What is a bird? What is a bird? Does that seem like a silly question? What is a tree? What is a dog? Something has come into being, something that is alive in the world. Whether it's a mouse or a tree or a fish, something has become those things. That's a different way to look at it. Life takes on many shapes and forms, yet it has its commonalities. All life processes food. All life has DNA. All life reproduces in the same way. If you go into any cell in your body, you will have similarities with a tree, or a bird, or a fish. Because we have learned the long march of life is one of shapes and forms becoming other shapes and forms.
No way.
50 million years ago, there were no birds. Before 400 million years ago, there was no fish. All the animals and plants have evolved during different times, appeared out of nowhere, you might say. The birds we see in trees today came from the dinosaurs. That's amazing. I talk about that almost every week, I think. Birds came out of the line of dinosaurs, who were the first animals to have feathers. A whale was once a land animal. How amazing is that? A whale was once like a hippopotamus that lived on the shore. Eventually, that animal went back to the sea. Excuse me. And became a whale. How is that possible? When the first flowering plants appeared about 140 million years ago, the first bees also appeared, as well as ants and termites. Life becomes life. Life is a co-creation, you might say. One thing leads to another. Pretty amazing that life has this ability to change over time, right? Otherwise, we'd still be bacteria. But life has this ability to grow and to become more. Pretty extraordinary that life could lead to creatures like us. And who knows where we will go? Who knows what human beings will become in 10,000 years or 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years? The universe is very patient. It takes its time. It does things in the proper season. Any questions? Do you find this interesting? The world is a great wonder, but much of it is hidden from us. We live in an interesting time when we can understand the world as never before, when we can probe into its depths as never before. If you want to know about the climate, for example, you can drill into the ice in Antarctica. And when you take that ice out of the ground, you can know what the temperatures were like, what the composition of the air was like. millions of years ago. Pretty amazing, right? We can look out now into the stars, into the starry night, and understand that the universe is far bigger than we ever imagined. A few hundred years ago, it was thought that there were maybe a few thousand stars. Now we know that in our own galaxy, a collection of stars that we think contains 100 billion, 200 billion, maybe even 500 billion stars, stretching out halfway to the next galaxy, the Andromeda Galaxy, which is twice as large as ours and hurtling towards us. I don't know when, in a billion years or 10, 20 billion years, that galaxy is going to collide with us. We really don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be interesting. That's for sure. Any questions? The Buddhists say life is change. When we look at the world, when we look at the universe, we can certainly say that's true. Stars and planets come into being, appear and disappear like living beings. Worlds come into being, produce life, and maybe even intelligent life. We don't know how many intelligent life forms there are in the universe. Certainly there must be more than just us. What do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think there are other intelligent beings living on planets, maybe not that far away? Do you think we could be observed as well as being the observers? Yes, huh? It's possible we could be being observed from other worlds. It's possible that other beings from other worlds have already made contact. There are many secrets in this universe.
Yeah, I know the All right.
Each moment is a wonder and miracle. Each moment the sun is shining, warming the planet. We don't think much about it, but it is a kind of miracle. It happens because of the fundamental nature of this universe, the way things are put together, the way those atoms work together. Civilizations, societies have worshipped the sun, and with good reason. The sun is the bearer of life, the bearer of warmth. The light we get from the sun makes our food possible. There's a scientist who wrote a book called Eating the Sun. In a way, that's what we do when we have our food. We're eating the sun because the sun has provided the energy to make our food. Without that energy, life would not exist. And so the sun, which is constant, which shines for billions of years, allows life to arise on the planet, allows it to create its sustenance, allows it to evolve, to grow, to become something new, to realize its potentials. It's interesting that atoms and molecules contain potentials, kind of like a big jigsaw puzzle that you can, or a big kind of building block set that you can put together. The atoms of this world
Yeah, come sit right here, Beatrice. Beatrice is here.
Oh, good.
Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
You too.
So we're just talking about atoms and the world and how the sun is powered by the ability of atoms to produce light and warmth. All atoms contain light. A long time ago, somebody said, I have come from the light. I was there before the beginning. Who was that person?
I don't know. The Heavenly Father?
Who?
Heavenly Father?
Well, it goes back a long, long way before that. 2,000 years to the Middle East, to Israel. And this person who was a Jew and who would be crucified were trying to reform the society at the time. He said, I have come from the light. I was there before the beginning. Pretty amazing.
Yes, it is.
The world is made of light. Everything around us, including ourselves, is nothing but energy that has been made to create this world. It's amazing that energy creates matter, which was what Einstein said. E equals mc squared. Remember that? E equals mc squared. That means energy and matter are the same, equivalent. It's very complicated. I don't understand the whole thing myself, but it's very complicated, and it means that energy and mass or matter are interchangeable. We see the world around us as material, and yet that material is basically energy. Basically the little components of atoms which are spinning, and as they spin, They produce mass or matter that's unbelievable. It's as if nothingness becomes something. The universe is basically is mostly empty space, but we have energy fields in that empty space that are creating things like atoms and molecules, and those things create mass and matter. It's beyond comprehension. The world that we experience is just the tip of the iceberg. Any questions, comments? Deep in the woods, I tried walking on all fours. I did it for an hour or so, through thickets, across a field, down to a cranberry bog. I don't think anyone saw me. At the end, I was exhausted and sore, but I had seen the world from the level of grasses, the first bursting growth of trees, lumps, slops, slopes, rivulets, gashes, open spaces. I was some slow old fox, wandering, breathing, hitching along, lying down finally at the edge of the bog and under the swirling rick-rack of the trees. So there's an interesting paragraph about getting down to the level of other beings, the animals and birds, the worms perhaps, and insects, getting down to their level and experiencing the world as they do. You know, a dog, how many have had a dog here? Anybody have a dog? Or a cat? You know, those animals experience the world in a different way than we do. They have a much sharper sense of smell, for example, and they know much more about what certain things are going on around them than we do. The way a bird sees is more acute than our eyesight. A hawk can see up to 10 times better than we can. An owl can see the faintest light in the night. There are bugs that navigate by starlight. Pretty amazing, right? So while we have pretty good senses, other creatures exceed us in their ability to understand the world or perceive it in a different way. There's a shrimp in the Pacific that can see many more colors than we can. And so do some insects and birds. Any questions? The fox is sitting on a sandy rise. It is looking at me. It yawns. The pickets of its teeth glitter. It scratches under its jaw, rises, and in a slow, haunchy nonchalance leaps over the slopes of sand and then down a path, walking, then trotting. Then it sprints into the shadows under the trees, as if into water, and is gone. Things appear and disappear, rise, flourish, and are gone. Beneath appearances, there is something eternal, something beyond our understanding. Perhaps we call it God, the Spirit, the divine. The sacred. The world is full of the hidden. There was a monk in China who said you can go to places that have great mountains and waters, but I don't need to leave my doorstep to be immersed in wonder and mystery. Each of us is a wonder, a gift from the universe, a unique expression. Hello there.
Hello.
Each of us is a unique expression of the cosmos, where we have come from, where we find our birth and our home. Each of us is beyond comprehension. Each moment in life is a treasure in itself, if we can but see it. Any questions or comments? Sometimes when speaking about these things, I feel that we have gone into a different territory. There are certain moments when there is a deepening of the silence in the room. And that silence is like a doorway, an opening.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Can you guys hear?
Mhm.
Okay.
People who meditate, people who contemplate the universe or God, quiet themselves to open to something, to open a doorway. I have a book here, if you give me a moment. Well, I can't find that book, but it's a book in which Jesus says, I am the door. And this door is not a door. It is an openness. It is a space. It is a silence. And to come into the mystery of the sacred, you have to enter that door, which is not a door, but a silence. But still, it is a passageway. A place where we can go from our ordinary understanding into something else. Something we cannot put into words, perhaps. But only experience. I want to thank you all today for your deep listening. Thank you for being in class. I hope you will take something with you from this class today. And as I'm hoping I can take with me. I think it's an opportunity, a rare opportunity that we can talk about these things. Any comments or questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye now. Take care and be well.
You too. Have a good afternoon.
You too. You too. May we understand the wonder of this afternoon.
That's right. May we understand the wonders of the universe.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Be well.